I work as a creative director and advertising copywriter. I started out working in Bangladesh at Bitopi Advertising, and currently I work for an education company. I've worked in Bangladesh, America, remotely. I've worked in Sweden, Brazil, England, Nepal, India. And I have a master's degree in advertising, and I have a bachelor's degree in English literature. When I started working in advertising, I didn't have a bachelor's degree. I was a college dropout. But what I did have, what I think is really important in advertising, was that I really love to learn. Even you don't necessarily have to have the best degree. It doesn't have to. In fact, I recommend it not being in marketing, because marketing degrees will poison your mind. But I do really recommend you to constantly be seeking out new forms of knowledge. You can get knowledge anywhere and everywhere, and there's always something to learn. Everybody has something to teach you. So that's the most important thing. It was totally accidental. I was doing a video shoot for somebody and they offered me a job because I think they liked me, and I had the most junior job, so it was peanuts. I think, looking back, I think it's probably the only thing that I'm really good at, and the reason why is because every day you have to learn something different. Right now I'm working at an education company, and then before this I was writing social media for cartoons. Before that I worked at a company where the main brand that I worked on was a supermarket, and the other thing was a hospital. And every time you do something, when you're writing about a cartoon, you watch all 7 seasons of it. When you're writing about, say, medical accreditation, you have to know everything about ambulatory care. You don't have a lot of time to learn. You just have to learn everything, and you master it, and you write it in such a way that people who aren't experts can understand what you're talking about and what it means to them. 20 years ago, you had to be an artist to get into advertising, or a writer, or a poet. 10 years ago, you definitely had to be a little bit weird. Today, the creative industry, thanks to social media and digital channels, which are super accessible, you don't need a degree, there's no barrier to entry, you don't have to work in a big company. It's a lot easier to get into advertising. And when I say advertising, I'm using it as a catch-all term to include, any sort of social media work, any sort of digital advertising, search engine optimization, blogging for money. There's so much of it out there. So it's widely accepted. It's really easy to get into, and all you need to do is just use your brain. You don't need a degree. You don't need anything else. You just need to be really smart, and you need to keep on learning. I think my biggest problem with advertising agencies in Bangladesh, and this is not a problem that's unique to Bangladesh, but I think that it's especially bad in Bangladesh, is that advertising agencies tend to measure success by one of 2 metrics. One is the number of awards a campaign won, and the other thing is how much money they spent on video production. Both of these things are completely pointless because they're not serving the consumer, they're not changing the consumer's life, and in many cases they're not necessarily serving the brand. The number one thing you should do as an advertiser is help your consumer's life change for the better, and you should do it by serving the brand. I think that the biggest gap in Bangladesh that we really need to work on is building a culture of efficiency. I work with writers. They'll write one line and they'll be like, that was all I could do. That's not how it works. You write 100 lines and then you choose the best one. So I think the biggest thing we need to do is teach people how to use their time efficiently, so that you're working harder for 8 hours or 6 hours instead of not working as hard for 14 hours. And the other thing I think we need to do is we need to hold ourselves up to a higher standard, because I meet all these really brilliant people that just don't work very hard. If I had to hire somebody, I would hire somebody who A, sticks to deadlines, and B, holds themselves up to a really high standard, and they understand that what might be high for them is not high universally. So they want to go, they just want to keep improving themselves. So that's what I do. The two best things about working in advertising in Bangladesh are, A, there's limitless opportunity. If you work hard and you do a good job, you will skyrocket. You will be so successful. Please give me a job when you do that. And the other great thing is you have a lot of really creative people that you can work with directly. And I think it's a field where if you are willing to work hard and if you're willing to think, then you're going to go really far. The two bad things are, the number one terrible thing about advertising in Bangladesh, in general, but specifically Bangladesh, is the hours are terrible. Like, people expect you to work 12 to 14 hours a day. That's stupid. That's completely unnecessary, but that's what happens. And the other thing is that I've found that in certain agencies, office cultures can be toxic. And that's not necessarily how it has to be, but I've found this to be true pretty universally in every country that I've worked at. Thank you for talking to me!